Part 4. Between Angels and Devils. Chapter 19. Once again, Urza descended. It was his preferred approach when arriving in unknown and hostile territory, and Serra's realm, as it had devolved in the last few centuries, was indeed unknown and hostile. It was still an Empyrean skyscape, an arcing firmament stacked with rafts and mountains of cloud. Now, though, the once blue sky was tinged in yellow and gray. A brimstone stink of Phyrexian glistening oil filled the air, and the realm's illusion of limitlessness had fallen away like a tattered robe. Heaven seemed cramped. The curve at the edge of it was just perceptible. The angel realm had once been a place of white cloud mesas with large garden berms drifting placidly among them. Now the great berms had disintegrated into small clods, some only the size of shacks, and the sublime mountains had tumbled into pessimistic hills. Their color was muddied too, as though they were loosening their quintessence and transforming into dirt. All the lines had been blurred, every constitution was diluted, each ideal was debased. Phyrexians were here. They excelled in such transformations. Urza turned a slow spiral as he descended. Gemstone eyes marked out signs of habitation. At one time, the realm had no need for dwellings, for there was neither cold nor rain, night nor predators, and the very air nourished any who breathed in. Then, the only structures were built for the sake of art or philosophical contemplation. Pillared gardens, ivy-covered amphitheaters, high halls of state, groves of mana stones, galleries beneath the whirling heavens. Now many of these edifices clung in broken ruin to disintegrating clods of ground. Buildings not firmly rooted had fallen away in the tumbling chaos. Their foundations jutted like shattered teeth from rolling chunks of ground. Among these foundations, new structures had been fashioned that seemed more the beige hives of mud daubers than the homes of angels. They were hard-packed outside, and inside delved into spinning darkness entrenchments against inclement weather and sudden night and marauding predators. Phyrexians were here. The smoke that rose from some of these deep hovels told of fires within to heat and dry the dark, cold spaces. The scent of flesh on that smoke told of creatures being hunted and slaughtered and eaten. No longer was breathing sufficient to sustain life. Now life had to be stolen from others who had it. Angels lived upon mortal flesh. The plane, once a living creature in its own right, had died. Every tissue and corpuscle of its being struggled to survive, preying on neighboring cells, drawing nourishment from the decaying body all around. Phyrexians were here. They had killed the plane and taught the dying to eat the dead. Only one fine structure remained, Serra's palace. Urza glimpsed the palace, floating distant and dark within the gray sea of sky. It looked like an inverted question mark, a fact that had seemed fitting when Serra resided in the crystal aviary at its pinnacle. She had devoted herself and her realm to the constant debate of perfect society, perfect virtue, and perfect beauty. Questioning and discussion were an inescapable part of her realm. Now, though, the inverted question mark of the place symbolized a place adrift, constant questioning becoming eternal doubt. It no longer meant debate, but confusion. Toward that sign of confusion, Urza floated. As he neared the spot, he saw that it glinted more with rusted steel than silver. Its great banks of golden glass were shrouded in orange grills, spiked and forbidding. Its ivory pilasters were chipped and yellow. The windows of its fanciful turrets had been knocked out to make space for batteries of ballistae and barracks of angel warriors. These later flooded out upon acrid air, approaching the invader. They were led by 3 archangels. Gigantic eagle's wings bore these creatures hurtling forward. In their hands glinted magna swords, single-edged and curved at the tip. The blades were halfway between scimitars and axes. A carapace of massive silver plate armor covered each of them, and a skirt of metal mesh trailed behind. Silver masks hid their faces. In the wake of these 3 fierce defenders came a contingent of 30 some warrior angels, smaller and more lightly armored than the archangels. These creatures, nevertheless, bore wicked-tipped lances, round bracers, and expressions of fanatical loyalty. Urza watched as they came. He readied the supernatural defenses of his planeswalking form. He would not fight these creatures, but they might fight him. Even if he could survive such a conflict, there would be more forces in the palace. Archangels, angels, the sisterhood of Serra, human warriors, and citizens of the realm. He would have to win past them all and do it without fireballs and killing. to reach the embattled creature at the center of this collapsing plane. He had come not to conquer, but to ally. They swarmed around him. Wings beat the yellow air. The three archangels formed a triangle that hemmed him in, and angel warriors orbited in a large sphere all around. Droning wings almost drowned out the stentorian command of the lead angel. "Approach no farther," the archangel said from behind the mask. Cold, ruthless, and almost metallic, the voice was neither male nor female. "You are uninvited." "I am as a planeswalker," the man responded, his white robes of state stark against the brown clouds and fetid winds. "We know," the archangel replied. "We remember the smell of you." The comment was spoken matter-of-factly, without humor or malice. Urza's lips tightened. "Yes, but I do not recognize the smell of this place." "Much has happened since you came. Much has happened because you came." With or without inflection, the implication of this statement was clear. "That is why I have returned," Urza replied. "I've come to help restore the realm to its former splendor." "It is not your concern, Planeswalker," the archangel said. "It is not your war." "It is if I become your ally." "Lady Radiant needs no allies." "Radiant. Yes, I remember her. So, Radiant is a command now?" "Yes." "She needs no allies." "Yes." Urza cast an ironic glance around at the devolving realm. "It would seem to me she could use whatever help she could get." "It is not for you to decide." "Nor for you." "Take me to her," Urza said in sudden command. "You're uninvited." "I could merely walk there." Urza lifted his hands threateningly to either side, and the sphere of the angels widened just perceptibly. "I am Urza Planeswalker." The angry buzz of wings deepened. Angels nervously fingered their lance hafts. The lead archangel drifted toward Urza. From behind its mask, air emerged, hot and steely. "Come with us." The creature backed away from the planeswalker, its unseen eyes remaining ever on him. Without further word, Urza followed through the droning air. All about him, angels hovered in static threat. Their shadows, pale and diffuse in the sickly glow of the sky, passed languidly over Urza as they went. Ahead, the dark, overturned question mark grew. With each moment, its transformation was more apparent. OG arches above landing platforms bore boxy portcullises like iron false teeth. Fine traceries had been removed to make room for bulky grills. Crystal mana collectors had been replaced here and there by smoking chimneys. Lines of soot traced across buttresses and blast points showed where the palace had sustained attack. "Your palace has become a fortress," Urza noted, and he remembered a similar transformation of his academy. "Only a temporary measure," the lead archangel said, maintaining his backward flight. "But, as you can see, the defenses are wanted." Urza could see. He imagined Phyrexians swarming the palace, riding on their wicked skyships or flying on wings of steel. He could imagine salvos of bolts arcing from the engines and smashing against the floating city. He could imagine angels much like these pouring from the shattered windows and staved walls. There was war in heaven, and he had brought it. "Yes, warranted. That's why I want to speak to Lady Radiant. Her foes are my foes. I know of the monsters lurking here, and I have armies of my own to help destroy them." Behind its quicksilver mask, the archangel did not respond. It merely drifted backward, without apparent effort, toward a large landing platform at the base of the inverted question mark. The platform jutted like an angry jaw from beneath a dark archway. Its edge was ringed with curved horns, the teeth of a great carnivore. A few flying machines hung in dock around it. Clusters of figures stood in their midst. 3 were archangels and another handful angel warriors. Most of those on the air dock, though, were moiling crowds, angels and humans. They clustered together like fearful sheep. Guards strode around their group and jabbed with the butt of their spears. Some of the humans, packs on their backs, staggered up a wobbly gangplank and onto a waiting airboat. Meanwhile, in sad knots, angels broke from the rest, laboring out into empty air. "Who are they?" Urza asked on the final approach of the landing. The archangel before him sank lightly to stand on the crowded platform. Other angels around alighted as well. "Refugees mostly, fleeing the rebels to the far reaches. They've come to the city for protection. We have no room for them. Others are dissidents, heading for exile." Urza nodded, setting feet to ground. The marble floor felt gritty, scored with stone chips broken off in some recent assault. "What plane will they be exiled?" "They will remain on this plane. No one leaves the realm, not even dissidents." "And what of planeswalking visitors?" Urza prodded. Radiant awaits above, the Archangel declared. Walking backward in the midst of the landed flock, the angel guided Urza into the once great city. The divine figure moved with a smooth ease as though its feet still did not touch the ground. It floated beneath yawning embellishment where refugees and dissidents huddled and brimstone breezes blew. The spaces within were vast, dwarfing even the mob of angels around Urza. Tall, slender columns held aloft vaults of stone. When last Urza walked these halls, those vaults rang with lyric music and the sounds of lively debate. Now they roared with the shouts of sparring soldiers. Along the walls, rank upon rank of stone golems stood in mute insolence, ready to slay any army that might land upon the platform. The windows behind them were covered in black iron, giving the place a cave gloom. In the center of the main plaza, a great fountain stood, 5 stories high and ornately carved with angelic figures. If Urza remembered from his last visit, the statuary depicted the great virtues of Sarah's realm: art, discourse, freedom, and peace. No water flowed over that fountain anymore, though. The figures representing these virtues stared out from beneath great rags of dust. At their feet, martial mounts, griffins, and pegasi drank from a half-full stagnant pool. Beyond the fountain, a great amphitheater sank into the floor. Urza remembered the glorious wall of golden glass that had stood beyond it, a rubble and mortar bulwark now sealed off the rear of the theater, protecting its users from aerial attack. A platoon of human holy warriors used the site. Before them paced an archangel, its sexless voice instructing them in techniques for cleansing and sealing off Phyrexian catacomb complexes. Want to be certain none of them survive? Do not assume that any number of spell blasts will cleanse a warren. Enter, but do so with caution and in teams. Once within, there will be burned bodies. Make certain they are dead. Behead them. Do not let a single neck remain intact. Black mana spells can bring them back even so. They heal with preternatural ease. Do not assume a warren is cleansed simply because all visible foes are dead and quiet. Search every space. They hide like rats. Look for secret chambers. Look especially for their offspring. These will be hidden best of all. Kill them. Behead them. Let not a single one remain. Will it become 20 and return to slay you? Use your soul torches. Make certain the job is accomplished. Urza reflected grimly on this advice, the same he would have given to anyone going with him into Crick's Fast Time Gorge if anyone had been able to accompany him. The Archangel leading him glanced upward. The party had just reached a broad shaft that rankled upward past hundreds of floors and balconies and promenades. Even in its decayed state, the space was awe-inspiring, disappearing into blue distance a mile overhead. She awaits above. The angels, like a startled flock of doves, leaped suddenly into the air. Urza accompanied them. As they rose, he saw the city in cross-section. The streets were deserted, the public squares taken over by encamped warriors, the windows darkened by plates or locked away in cages of steel. Hollow groans moved through the haunted structure. Smoke seeped from forges. Boot steps echoed from armories. A jewel box no longer. Sarah's palace had become a weapon. It was a city under siege. Urza thought of his distant Talaria. It had once seemed as lost as this place. Now it was the nexus of a new alliance that spread across Dominaria. It had been a long battle to save the island. It would be a longer battle to save Sarah's realm. But it was a battle he would willingly fight. They arrived. Urza drifted from the shaft into an enormous space, a circle of marble thousands of feet across. A vast hole in the center of the space opened onto a deep, verdant forest, a little hanging garden in which exotic birds flittered and sang. Above the marble circles rose mile-high windows of stained glass. All along the outer walls of the aviary tower, platforms and perches hung, where Lady Radiant's court conversed or planned or discussed. Banners of state, some with the sun and wing heraldry of Sarah, and others with Radiant's own lantern and darkness design, floated on wires across the center of the tower. Most impressive of all, the glistening oil stink that tainted the air everywhere else was gone. Urza sensed the filtering work of great magic in the air. He exhaled in awe. The aviary was the only pristine place in the realm, quite an exorbitance given the aerial army it would take to protect the place. An angel nudged him with her staff and gestured toward the pinnacle of the aviary. The Archangel at the head of the party rose into the air. Up! As the contingent ascended up the tapered tower, the spaces around them closed in. Heat grew. In moments, palatial promenades gave way to large balconies. Golden windows narrowed. They changed too. As the party rose, simple triangles of glass gave way to powerful lenses. Light-bending enchantments lay thick on the panes. Some gave fragmentary views of other rooms in the palace. Others showed ruined gardens near the edge of the plain. Still more, followed over the shoulder of one angel or another. Every floating continent, every tumbling clod, every shattered wall of the place had its own window. Figures, angelic and mortal, moved kaleidoscopically through the panes of glass. All about Urza, angel warriors averted their eyes from the jarring mosaic of images. For them, the sight must have been dazzling and absurd. But Urza's multifaceted gaze could make sense of it. In this spot, he could see every corner of the realm. If he stayed here long enough, he could peer into every mind and heart in heaven. This all-seeing chamber had been the single most powerful tool at Sarah's disposal. In it, she or any other planeswalker would be omniscient. In the midst of the glaring windows hung her throne. The seat was grand, a pendulum dangling from the apex of the aviary. Its back was fashioned of pearl and lead gold. It was draped in red samite that curtained down into a hot space. It could pivot completely around and thus provide easy view of every pane of glass. The throne was politically well-positioned, too, requiring all supplicants to hover in air and crane their necks toward the one seated there. The planeswalker Sarah no longer occupied the throne. Now the seat held a mere angel, radiant. The woman sat the throne as though it were her eternal punishment. Mirrored images shone from the windows and swam sickly over her. She endured their ceaseless caress, but her eyes showed no sign of deciphering the images. For her, the throne was no all-seeing seat, but a torture chair dangling in the midst of an off-balance carousel. Her eyes were glassy from long exposure, and her hands clutched the throne like a pair of talons. She sat with the aspect of one terrified of heights, and did not deign to look upon the company that hovered up beneath her. Golden hair and white wings draped in regal majesty about her, but her face showed nothing like royal grace, only desperate resolve. She had never been suited to rule the realm, not even at the height of her power. She had fallen far since then. The realm had decayed around her, and war had begun. She seemed grimly determined to see it through to the bitter end. Though she did not look down, Lady Radiant recognized the prisoner.
Ah, Urza Planeswalker, returned at last to the scene of the crime?
Greetings, Lady Radiant, Urza said formally. He bowed in midair. In a way, I have. I have returned for an alliance. I have returned to save you from your foes.
Foes you brought to this place?
Radiant pointed out.
Foes such as your consort, Zancha.
Zancha was a friend, not a consort, Urza corrected placidly. And she did not bring the Phyrexians here. I did. They followed me.
They followed you and ruined us,
Radiant said.
We drove them out once, but never has their taint left us.
Urza nodded in understanding. Yes, the stench of Phyrexia is in the air. I sensed it the moment I arrived, faint but omnipresent. It is in the air, in the wind, off angel pinions, even in the lower palace. Only here, in this aviary, is the stench gone. Lady Radiant's voice was strained.
It takes great feats of magic to make this air pure.
But you cannot cleanse the whole realm. For that matter, you can never restore it to its old grandeur. With or without Phyrexians, all artificial planes collapse in time. This one is no exception. But I offer you salvation. I will bear you and all your people from this place and give you a new home on Dominaria. It will be as beautiful and grand as this place, and it will be yours. In return, you need only pledge your alliance to fight at my side against Phyrexia. Do not despair for this realm or for Sarah's vision. Once the plane is empty, it can become part of our greatest weapon. It can charge the Power Stone at the center of an airship that will defend our world.
Our world?
Asked Radiant, her eyes flashed with malice.
No! Dominaria is not our world. It is your world. This plane is our world. It is collapsing because of the fiends you brought here. I am fighting a war against those fiends. How dare you suggest we abandon our world? Would you abandon yours? Your old arrogance remains.
Forgive me, lady, Urza said, bowing. Much of my old arrogance does remain. I did not realize how committed you were to this battle. I should have. I have just concluded my own private war against Phyrexia. They can hide in plain sight. They take human form, perhaps even the form of angels. There's no more insidious foe. In apology for my presumption, I would like to share with you the technologies I devised and the spells my Mage Master devised to destroy them. If you will not ally with me on Dominaria, at least let me ally with you here. I offer myself, my machines, and my enchantments to aid in this private war of yours. It is exactly that, said a new voice, a man's voice coming from a platform behind Urza. He pivoted in the air to see a tall, thin man with a black goatee and eyes as slim and yellow as wedges of lemon. It is a private war.
Allow me to introduce my Minister of War, Gorig.
The goateed man gave a shallow bow, though he never lowered his baleful eyes from the planeswalker. He gestured to his own features. As you can see, I'm a wielder of mana magic. I'm also an able general. Our war is in hand, and it is private. Urza demurred with a small smile. I have learned no war is truly in hand. Though she said nothing, Radiant suddenly drew all eyes to herself. Her face wore a strange, beaming intensity.
When first we knew you had returned, Urza, we expected you had come for war. You must excuse us for being so surprised by your offers of peace.
It is a new man who floats before you, Urza explained.
Yes.
Radiant agreed, somewhat dismissive.
Before you commit yourself and your armies to this conflict, perhaps you would wish to accompany us on our next raid. We'd like to view your combat strategies as well. Our next offensive will be launched in a few weeks. Stay with us and feast until then. Once we have battled shield to shield, as the saying goes, we will know if this alliance will benefit us both.
Urza nodded. This counsel is well considered. He bowed low. I gratefully accept your invitation. At a motion from Radiant, the swarm of archangels and angels melted away beneath them, leaving only the planeswalker, the angel ruler of Sarah's realm, and the dark-bearded man, Gorig. In one noisy wing of the Shivan mana rig, Joyra and Karn peered through the glass port in the side of the crystal matrix chamber. Below the floor, magma engines channeled their searing heat into a concentrated beam of ruby light. It rose up a series of tubes reflecting from panels of silvered glass positioned in exact alignment and lanced into the matrix chamber. There, the beam was split by a large lens and split again, the four resulting bands of light rebounding through the space to sketch out in air the exact dimensions and cut lines of the airship's power stone. Ethereal stone for an ethereal ship, Joy remarked acidly. Karn glanced briefly toward her, wondering at her mood.
At the rate Multani is growing the hull, the ship is more than ether now. It's been over a month.
I know, Joyra snapped. She rose from the riveted superstructure, dusted off her hands, and whistled toward a scampering team of goblins, signaling the magma pumps to accelerate. Almost 2. Urza's off on another of his endless journeys. A quizzical gleam entered the Silverman's eyes.
He has saved Talaria. He made alliances with Yavimaya. He has devised a great ship to save the world. Now he seeks to drive Phyrexians from another place. You can't fault him for that.
I don't, Joyra said impatiently. She stooped beside a pair of arguing goblins, entered the disagreement in their own dialect, pointed to a schema one of them held, delivered a pair of thumps to their heads, and sent them on their way. It's just that Teferi's gone.
He's what?
Karn asked. He'd said when we were leaving that he'd be heading for his homeland, Zalfir. They were having a war of their own, and they could use a mage of his caliber. He wanted to say goodbyes 3 weeks ago, but I put him off. Said we'd have time when I returned from Shiv. I thought we'd be here only 2 weeks.
Perhaps he's still at Talaria,
Karn said.
Perhaps he is waiting for us to come back. What difference will a few weeks make?
Much difference in time of war, Joyra said. She angrily threw a great lever, sending lava into chutes around the matrix chamber. These channels of rock would solidify around the ionized center of the jewel matrix, providing a compression mold. No, he's gone. He wouldn't wait for me. He couldn't wait for Urza. Last time Urza stepped out for a week, he was gone for 5 years.
He's changed, Joyra,
Karn replied.
Before that trip, he traded me away to the Viashino. Afterward, he negotiated to get me back.
Joyra at last stopped working, letting labor slough from her shoulders. This isn't about Urza. This is about Teferi. Stomping up beside her, the Silverman stood, awkward. He had long ago learned not to drape one of his massive arms over Joyra in consolation, lest he crush her.
We were best friends before Teferi. We can be best friends again.
She turned toward him, a trembling smile on her lips and tears welling in her eyes. You're right, Karn. We've always been best friends. I was silly to think I needed more. A tremor of uncertainty underlay her words. Hesitantly, Karn reached out to take her hand.
Urza has taken me back, and now you have as well.
Yes, Joyra said. She melted sadly against him. Karn stood there, even more lonely than before. He was the only thinking, feeling machine among Urza's artifact creatures, and because of it, Urza had no idea what to do with him. Karn was not a colleague, nor was he a mere creation. He had been designed to journey through a time machine that no longer even existed. He was kept busy with 1,000 duties, but he had no real purpose. Had he been any other artifact creature, Urza would already have junked him, melted down his parts, and made new machines. Now, though Joy recalled him best friend, her voice told him of disappointment and resignation. Standing there, Karn wondered if joining the junk pile would be a mercy. Teferi left just this morning. He took the refitted New Talaria and a small army of runners, pumas, and scorpions. I kept half the force, some 500 units, but probably did not need to. The island has been cleansed of Phyrexians. Spider crystals fill the land. Zolfir needs the machine warriors more than we do. But Teferi's ship would not hold more. As it was, I had to argue quite a while to get the proud young mage to accept the mechanical aid. I do not blame him. Where my association with Urza makes artifice a necessary study, I much prefer spell battles to mechanized ones. Of course, if one wants to win, one employs both. I'm seeing such necessary connections everywhere these days. The hull of the skyship is taking shape day by day. Wood fuses with metal, and both grow together. I have spent many evenings with Maltani. Weary in the suspiring night, he relates to me all he has learned from our fast and slow time forests. He speaks of young worlds and old, of the cycle of growth and decay. He tells how the blast that tore through Talaria brought death in its first moments and new and diverse life thereafter. He says that it had not been for the destruction of Argoth and the sinking of Terrasaia, Yavimaya would never have risen. Life and death oppose each other, yes, but it is only in their opposition that either can exist at all. There is no death without life and no life without death. Magic and machine, metal and wood, life and death, Shivan fire drakes and Talarian sea drakes, somehow Urza has brought them all into alliance. Somehow, the words of Maltani himself, Urza has come to embody each of them. I have never had such hope for our world as I do now. Urza has been gone too long in Sarah's realm. He seemed to think he would be able to quickly tell angels from devils. I have to wonder, if fire and water can become allies, perhaps good and evil can too. Baron, Mage Master of Talaria.